everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of Muppet Monday here at Adorkable Rachel. To my left is a gentleman that you actually might recognize. He is an actor, a voice artist, and also you may know him especially as a puppeteer. He has done a lot of work with the Muppets, Sesame Street, Bear in the Big Blue House, and also Between the Lions, and also, believe it or not, he has appeared on off-Broadway, Please, everyone, welcome the very talented Tyler Bunch.
Thank you very much. Greetings.
Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Of course.
Okay, so getting along right with our questions, I think it's safe to say you're not obviously just a puppeteer. You are a pretty prolific performer because, as I mentioned, you've done a lot of film acting, you've done some stage acting as well, and you've also done some voice artist work. So my big question for you first is, how long have you been performing? How long have you been an actor, and when did you know that you wanted to be an actor?
Well, that's a two-stage question. The first time I was on stage was when I was 3 years old, but I don't really count it because my father used to teach theater, and during the process of getting his different degrees and working summer jobs, one of my first shows was the Great Smoky Mountain Passion Play in Tennessee. I was one of the children that the gentleman playing Jesus picked up and preached about and sat on a donkey and rode me off stage.
Appropriate story.
Yeah, right. But I wanted to be a naturalist. I wanted to be a zoologist from the time I could walk until about the age of 14 is when the theater bug really bit me. Mainly because, it's always a heartfelt reason. My parents got divorced, and when I moved away from my father with my mother, one of the few places I kind of still felt as if I was in home or in a home was theater class. And it kind of grew on me, and I basically decided, I guess about the age of 16, 17, that I definitely wanted to be a professional performer.
And you've been working with Sesame Street since 1993, from what I read.
Correct.
And what was the very first time that you ever worked with puppets? Was that the first time, or had you worked with them previously before that?
Puppets in general, no. Being paid well to do arm and rod or television style puppets, Muppet style puppets, yes. My first work as a puppeteer was as a marionettist in high school. I kind of fell into a summer gig, and I really enjoyed marionettes. The job was fun, but it didn't grab me as an artist. It was interesting, but it wasn't as fulfilling. But because of my exposure to puppetry, a friend of the family pointed out when she saw an ad in the paper for somebody looking to train monitor style puppeteers in the Florida area. She's like, "You did puppets, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I like puppets." She's like, "You should check this out." And that was my introduction to monitor puppetry, and that's what I kind of really fell in love with as far as the art of puppetry goes.
So, unless it was Sesame Street, and besides Sesame Street, then what was the very first Muppet or Jim Henson / Sesame Street project that you ever worked on?
Again, the style of puppets, the first thing that I did was with that group that I learned from called Rex and Randy's Room. That was a 5-minute segment of a cable access program that, unbeknownst to me, was getting a lot of national attention from our little station in Florida. So when I moved to New York and sent my tape of the stuff I had done for that show to the Jim Henson Company, and obviously if you're in New York and you're sending a tape to New York, the only thing to really work on consistently would be Sesame Street. From there, I was invited to first just view on the set, and then became one of the rungs on the very long ladder when they needed lots of folks. And so I worked a total of maybe a dozen times between 93 and 97. And that was the first professional Muppeteer style gig for Henson. And then a couple of the promos and some of the outreach stuff, and specifically some of the PSA style stuff that they did for movie theaters. If you guys ever remember the "Don't Forget to Watch the Movie" song. And then I was fortunate enough, because I was on the list of third stringers, fourth stringers, I was fortunate enough to get the audition for Bear in the Big Blue House, which was the first time I had my own characters in something that had national and international distribution.
Interesting. Okay, and we'll definitely be talking about that. But what I also wanted to ask you was, you said you started as a marionettist, and then it kind of evolved from there. But what exactly was it about puppetry that drew you to that art?
I think when I really started to, I gained my first technical interest, I guess, when I was in high school watching Fraggle Rock on HBO. Just kind of curious of how it was done. But it didn't become a passion until college. And I think just the challenge of really bringing this inanimate object to life, the idea that the people on the other side of the experience, the audience, could see this inanimate object thinking and emotionally responding, that challenge of being part of really the magic of that, I think, was what drew me to it. And then I kind of stayed in it because I'm a big guy, and I've always been a tall guy, and I've always had a very specific visual and physical type. And as an actor, that pigeonholes you whether your talent sticks you in that same rut or not. So my desire to play more interesting characters and more interesting roles was stronger than the tools nature had given me. Most leading men are a little shorter than I am. Most bad guys are a little taller and or a little severe than I am. And I was in this kind of nebulous place. But puppetry gave me the opportunity to play whatever my heart, my spirit could engender, whatever character I could come up with internally and get the vocal characteristics of and understand how they moved and how they reacted with their environment. Puppetry afforded me the opportunity to get in their skin, so to speak. So
Yeah.
That was really the most magnetic part of puppetry, is just the range of characters open to the artist.
That's really cool. And you've been lucky enough to play a lot of characters on Sesame Street and also the Muppets even, and you've also voiced a lot of your own characters, as you said, such as Bear in the Big Blue House. You performed the very lovable Trilo from Bear in the Big Blue House. I would love to talk about all the characters you've done, but of course we don't have time. What I want to know is, what is the most rewarding / your most favorite character that you've ever performed?
Oh, that's a hard one. My job on Sesame, as you pointed out, allows me to be part of this amazing engine that I think is part of what's fueling our society nowadays in terms of introducing children to the basic construct of their world and how to interact with it. And the impact that show has is something that I hope at least is going to last a very, very long time. Being part of that is enormous. Mm-hmm. And that's something that none of the other opportunities have afforded me, at least for not this length of time. Between the Lines was comfortable and it was a lot of fun. It's just obviously not going to have the longevity. Bear was amazing just in terms of the family that show was, and I have yet to hear anyone who actually saw the show that didn't fall in love with it.
I fell in love with it.
Yeah,
Even though it was I was way beyond being able to watch that sort of thing, but I fell in love with it.
It's such a wonderful experience and such an endearing show. And this is gonna sound weird, but the most artistically satisfying job I've had so far was the silly ad campaign that I did for Air New Zealand. There's this character named Rico that they had created with the help of a brilliant ad company in New Zealand called 99 and a couple of the writers there. The character was just ridiculously freeing. By the end of the campaign lasted over a year, and by the end of it, I kind of got to call the creative shots. Pretty much anything I wanted to do or
That's
say,
awesome.
they let me do. And that, and plus, I got to be on screen with Lindsay Lohan and The Hoff, and I got to record a rap that I helped write with Snoop Dogg. Those are just things you don't get to do that often unless you are in the upper echelon of something like the Muppets.
Right.
So as far as the career efforts are concerned, I'd have to say Rico's pretty high up there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love Rico. I got to see a lot of clips of him online. My next question is, a lot of people don't know that you've done a lot of voice work as well as doing puppeteering. And what I want to know is, since voiceover and puppeteering, they're kind of one and the same in that you're performing characters that are not really, yourself.
Sure.
Have you found over the years that doing both of them have kind of helped each other in a way?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Knowing, because again, just like with monitor puppetry, in a booth, you're wearing headphones, you kind of hear the impact of what you're creating as you're doing it. Monitor puppetry takes that up tenfold because you're also seeing the performance, so you know exactly what the audience is consuming, and you can be a little bit more in control, so to speak, of at least your goal set as a performer. Obviously, in cooperation with and in concert with the director and the technical aspects of the show and the lighting and of course the design of the puppet. But the work I've been able to do in the vocal booth has just made me a little more aware of the sensitivity of the equipment and the idea that that whole less is more idea in terms of a vocal performance. And it's expanded the idea, like each character, I think about your voice as a musical instrument, and most specifically kind of like the notes, the keys on a keyboard. And that each character in an ideal world occupies a certain space on that keyboard. You don't want your whole voice to be the entire range, because then if you're playing a character against that character, obviously, people might notice the similarity a bit.
Sure.
You don't necessarily want them to. But also just the idea that the character lives within a certain pocket. They've got their own life, and I visualize that even within their vocal life, and the idea that they play, basically one full scale on any given section of the keyboard. And being able to be in a booth where that's the only thing you're concentrating on has helped hone that, I think, to a certain degree.
Yeah, that's great. So earlier you brought up that you did Rico with Lindsay Lohan, and you've obviously worked with a lot of celebrities over the years. Just as a favorites question, who has your most favorite celebrity or well-known person been to work with so far?
Oh, wow. Just a side note, the reason I brought up the Lindsay Lohan thing is because it happened during the period of time that she was still on house arrest. So we actually had to shoot it in her home.
Really?
And she was still wearing the anklet, which is why that's a thing of note in my brain more than anything else, just because it was really bizarre to load a whole crew into her home because she couldn't leave it. That aside, there was a cool childhood thing of being able to work with Fred Newman on Between the Lines. Fred Newman is a well-known voice actor, and he wrote a book on how to make mouth sounds that my mom bought me when I was a kid. And so the whole idea of using all parts of your instrument to entertain, he was kind of paramount in my development as a vocal artist, and the kinds of characters and things I can do with my mouth and my voice. So being able to work with him was just kind of really cool. And I know not a lot of people know who he is, but you should look him up. Fred Newman's awesome. And I think he wrote a second book too. Being on set with Ian McKellen on Sesame Street was just like one of those once in a lifetime things. But I most of these things are so fast, and you're in and out of it so quickly, that you don't really get the time to get to know a lot of these folks. The coolest kind of took everything in stride and was always the same person every day, and you knew what you're going to get from him, was Whoopi Goldberg. I worked with Whoopi on a couple different projects, and she's just a cool human being, and she just will always be who she is, and she has no qualms about it. She's going to tell you her opinion when she has it, and she's a nice enough person that it's usually a good one. She's just amazing. Whoopi's very, very cool. The list is so long. I guess Whoopi's one of the higher up ones, because she's also one of the ones that I can see at other events, and she still remembers me and asks about me and my family.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's cool.
Very cool. Now, I know that you have also taught workshops before, specifically also the O'Neill Puppetry Conference. When you teach puppetry to young puppeteers, so to speak, do you try to specifically focus on a certain kind of skill or technique, or even like what's the best advice that you try to give to people who are just starting out and aren't quite on your skill level yet?
Gotcha. Bringing up the O'Neill is a good point, because I think first and foremost, just finding your voice, finding what you like about it. Like, we're all drawn to being performers at first because it's what we see. It's the element that we're most familiar with, the characters that we fall in love with. It's amazing how many folks start off thinking that's their path and then realize their mindset leans more towards writing, or leans more towards directing, or more toward design and building characters. Puppetry is unique in that it covers so many aspects of art that there's all kinds of different reasons to fall in love with it. But that's it, the love for it, the passion. If you don't have the passion for it, you're not going to give it the time that it deserves, whatever piece of the craft you decide to follow. So the first thing that I say is, if this isn't something you want to pick up and do every day, then you probably shouldn't kid yourself.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to give it the dedication that it deserves.
I've always said the same thing about acting too. It's just like, if this isn't something you absolutely love and feel the drive to do, then it's like, what are you doing it?
Yeah, and my father used to say that too as a teacher. He would say to his students when they would talk about wanting to be, involved in the theater in some way, shape, or form, is, close your eyes. If you can picture yourself being happy doing anything else, do that. Because this is hard. And then when it comes specifically, and again, the O'Neill is a unique animal in its own right, because there's so many different aspects of the art that people are trying to develop when they come there. Because it is mainly a literary institution, what the institution would like most folks to focus on is the story you're telling. Whether or not the story you're telling is clear, whether or not the characters all deserve or need to be in that story. And so we're all kind of focused on that, the truth of the story, and the rest of it gets colored. When I'm teaching improvisation, that's its own focus. But when I'm teaching the skill set of monitor puppetry, the first thing is do what you like. And I'm going to be even more specific about that. When you watch the Muppets, when you watch Sesame, Fraggle Rock, whatever it was that made you be interested in it, those characters come across in a specific way for very specific reasons. It's how they're relating to the audience, both in terms of the specific point of view of the camera, but also the timing of the emotion, the whole embodiment of the characters, what people are reacting to. Imitating it and just parroting it doesn't come from the heart. That comes from the head. That comes from a desire to want to be like that.
Yeah.
Communicating from the heart through the puppet is always going to be what shows through in any of the aspects of it. Knowing that there's something you want to say, or knowing that there's a character you want to touch the audience. If you're just parroting something, if you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, it's not going to ring true. Now, that isn't to say you shouldn't imitate people who you like. Totally steal from them. You have to steal from the techniques that you see that work. Otherwise, you spend all this time in the dark trying to figure out things out. If you don't emulate what works, you'll never get there. So it's a hybrid of saying what you want to say through these techniques. And what you're going to learn most from is not just watching and being entertained, but watching and saying, how is that working? Why am I affected in this moment, in this way, by that character doing that thing? The tilt of the head, the way, the timing, whether it feels like the character's slumping or standing up tall, all of it plays in to such a degree that if you don't take it all in and regurgitate it with your own emotions attached, it's going to feel like an empty performance, or it's just not going to be perceived. It's not going to connect with anyone.
Wow. Very informative. Thank you. And then Now, I have to ask, as someone who has performed with the Muppets over so many years, what is your favorite Muppet-related production, like, ever? Like, even if it's something you didn't work on, just anything out there.
Well, technically, Bear in the Big Blue House is still considered Muppets. At least Disney thought that on paper when they purchased it. So obviously that has to kind of rank number one. But I know because you're specifically speaking about the Muppet franchise. I have a lot of fond memories, although it's not the most popular thing with the crowds at large, of Muppets Wizard of Oz, just because it was the first time I spent any huge amount of time in Vancouver, and it was really the first time I had spent that much time on any given Muppet project. So I have fond memories of that because it was, the first.
Yeah.
And obviously I have fond memories of the Muppet's Kitchen with Cat Cora, which was a short-lived thing on the internet for Disney, because I was fortunate enough to play the lead character as far as the Muppets go in that particular...
Angelo, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But as far as the overall feeling, support from the crew, the whole concept of best idea wins being put into stark relief, and the overall joy on the set, this current iteration is probably gonna mark highest, just because everyone who comes to work on the Muppets for ABC seems to be having a blast.
Yeah. I've noticed that too since I came to visit the set and everything. Everyone always seems like they're having a great time.
It's true.
And from all the stories I've heard too.
Yeah.
That's great. And so speaking of which, actually, that kind of leads me into one of my next questions. Since we are here today, that's one of the reasons we get to be here and talk to each other, is because you are on the show. And I guess I would just like to know, in your words, like, what has your experience been on the show? You've kind of told me it has been a great experience so far, but like, even as far as like the interesting responses from the public that's been around and everything,
Sure.
and the reboot that's happened, the reboot, which a lot of us don't know too much about, but
Sure.
what has your experience been about the show? Like, what have you taken from it, in your words?
Gotcha. Well, first of all, outlaying my particular, responsibilities on the show as a whole. I'm kind of what I call a third stringer, which I said about Sesame too, in that I am there to provide support as a puppeteer. And in Disney's regard, that means we do not get the opportunity to voice the final iteration of characters. We're there in support capacity, holding up the characters that are multiply cast and hopefully giving them the life that the initial puppeteer would be supportive of and happy to see on screen, so that when they are in scenes with themselves, their characters are consistent. So far, I understood and identified with a lot of the fan response to the first few episodes of the show, in that its efforts to modernize itself and the overall effort to modernize, or at least make the characters look like they fit on the shelf with everyone else that's on TV right now. When you're dealing with this broad scope of entertainment that always has a certain bent, like whenever you look at it a certain period of time in television history, the shows kind of have a certain color, a certain feel to them, and the effort to put the Muppets on that same shelf and have people be just as interested to take it off that shelf push them in some directions that people weren't necessarily regarding as being consistent with their memories of the characters. And I would disagree that the characters weren't themselves. I think they were themselves. They were cast in a specific light that the folks at top were hoping was going to be more marketable in the current climate. And it's obvious that people would much rather see the characters they know and reacting in predictable ways, so to speak, to a modern situation versus adapting to that situation. So
It's been an interesting transition, hasn't it?
yeah, and I think people are going to be happy when the shows start coming up in a couple of weeks. That the heart of the Muppets, it was always there. I think they're just going to show a little bit more of it in the upcoming shows.
Good. I think that's what a lot of people are looking forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And a few more questions. I wanted to ask you also, what has been your favorite episode of the new series of the Muppets so far that you've worked on? Like, what's been like the one with the best experience, whether it's aired or not, or just which has been like the most fun for you?
I don't want to give away any storylines. Very impressed with one of the stories that we did that's coming up that...
you could just say like number 13 or whatever it was.
What number is it? I think it's either number 12 or number 13.
Mm-hmm.
The basic concept of it is body shaming, really.
Interesting. Okay.
And being made to feel embarrassed because of some specific physical or other aspect.
Okay.
And how the cast as a whole deals with that. And I think it's very cool. Just a very cool idea.
Sounds like a cool idea.
And I mean, the holiday episode was cute just because it just rang true to old, Muppet specials and the like. Just to feel like you're on a Muppet set at Christmas time.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
And it was a very good holiday episode, in my opinion. I thought that was great.
I agree.
And is there anything, you've obviously got a long road ahead of you, but is there anything in your career that you still want to achieve that you've not done yet? Like do you want to perform more characters? Is there more different kinds of voice work that you'd like to do? Like, what are the ultimate goals in your life that you still hope to achieve?
Well, I always feel that one of the unique aspects of being an actor who is a puppeteer is trying to keep both efforts as close to neck and neck as I can. I've failed miserably as an actor because the projects that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of as a puppeteer, far eclipse anything as that. But I feel both inform each other so well. I know that my work as a puppeteer, specifically monitor puppeteer, fully informs my work as an actor, especially for the camera. I'm a little more aware without being hyper concerned about where the camera is and the size of the shot and how big my performance should or shouldn't be. I've learned a lot of things that inform my actor because of my experience as a puppeteer. I would love the opportunity to do something in more of a lead capacity on a camera project as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the cool things about being an actor is you kind of, your marketability is only you.
Mm-hmm.
You, as long as you're comfortable in your own skin, whatever that skin is, there's always going to be a part there somewhere, even for, a guy with the ridiculous beard and long hair.
The thing that makes you, basically.
Exactly. Now, obviously, there are going to be more parts for your ingenues and your leading men, because there are going to be more stories that try to touch people's hearts that involve characters who are young and vivacious and trying to fall in love. But some of the more interesting stories are still out there and still waiting to be told, and there's always got to be characters that populate those worlds. So yeah, something where I carry a little bit more of the weight of the narrative as an actor would be a lot of fun. I mean, just like you said, I'm hoping I can pull a Carol Spinney and just keep doing this for another 30, 35 years.
Yeah.
One of the amazing things about telling stories to people is you never stop learning how to try and make them better. If you're open for it, there's always something to be learned about the art of storytelling, and the opportunity to keep learning is probably, I think, the best thing I can give myself, and hope that I keep doing.
Mm-hmm. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us today on this very special Muppet Monday episode. This has been an interview with Tyler Bunch. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and I will see you again for the next Muppet Monday. Mwah! Say goodbye. Bye!